Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of T-Dog RC. I'm Tim, and in this episode we are going to get started on the Spitfire builds, the VQ model Spitfire, and this episode is going to be all about getting the wings done. Look at these, brand spanking new pair of wings, classic Spitfire shape. So I've got quite a lot to do on these, so the whole episode is going to be all about getting these done. We've got to get the servos installed, get the cables run, get the flaps and the ailerons hooked up. I've got some retracts to put in, so got to get those done. And with this particular build, normally, you know, you'd get a big carbon bar or aluminium bar or something like that and slot the wings together that way. But with this particular model, the wings are actually glued together using this spar, so we've got to get that done as well. So quite a lot to crack on with. So without further ado, let's get this on the bench and let's get stuck in. Right then, so here we are on the bench, and I've got all of the bits and bobs out that I need. There's actually quite a lot of stuff to go into this wing. I was going to start with the flap servo, but annoyingly I've bought standard servos for this, because in the other VQ models I've had, everything's been a standard servo. I'm sure it has, but in this one the flap's like a mini servo, so like a 17-gram servo, which I haven't got any of those, so I'm going to have to order some of those, which means I've got 2 spare servos. I'll use those for something else. So can't do the flap, so I'm going to do the Aileron servo, which is a standard servo that I've got here. So this is one of the ones that I showed in the unboxing video. So this is it's actually a high voltage servo, because at one point I was going to run this high voltage, but then I realised I couldn't, because the undercarriage can only take up to 6 volts. But this is a high-tech metal geared high voltage servo, so nice quality servo. That's going to be going in there. I've got an extension lead, which hopefully is going to be long enough. I need to just double check that. And then we'll get that hooked up. There's a couple of different ways you can do the push rods on this. You can either use the little sort of servo keeper things, not quite sure what you call them, like that one there. You can just about see that, where you put the grub screw in the top and slot it through. I think I'm actually going to try using a Z-bend option on this with my Z-benders that I've got, because it's just a bit more secure, I think. So obviously with these, you've got a grub screw in the top, and then you've also got like a bolt that goes underneath. And of course, all these things, although you Loctite it all, you know, all these things can potentially come off. So I think I will go with a Z-bend, and then probably the same with the flap one. The flap push rods are a lot thinner than the Aileron push rods, which are in the main box. So I'm going to get that installed. Just some of the other bits I've just realised I've had to dig out. So I've got the retracts to go in. There's some covers. These are going to need trimming down, but they just sort of slot in there like that. But I'll put those in once we put the retracts in, just to sort of neaten that opening up. And then you've got these little things, which I actually had to hunt around for these. I couldn't find them at first, but they're in the bag of all the mouldings and things like that. These are going to go on the actual struts, and I guess just fit in there like that. And then there's some extra little bits of plywood they've included, and they're specifically for the retracts, because these retracts aren't just any retracts. These are the proper Spitfire ones for this model made by VQ. So they do include these little collets in the kit, which you only use if you're using retracts. And then these big blocks are for the standard undercarriage. So we've got quite a lot to be getting on with, but let's get started with the servo. So first job, let's just check to see if, oh yeah, that's going to be plenty long enough, that extension lead. So that's good. This one's got a keeper on it as well, but I will put some heat shrink tube over this just to be certain that that's nice and secure. They've also included the little piece of cotton, which you can't really see on the camera, but you see that little tab there. That's got a piece of cotton attached to it, so I can pull the servo lead through. So that's all included. They haven't put one in for the flaps, but that's not such an issue because it's not far away from the where it needs to come out. So first job I need to do is just get like the little grommets and things like that on here, and then I'm going to screw that in place, get the heat shrink tubing on here, and obviously drill the holes out for that as well. So I'll get that all set up, and then I'll come back to you when I'm ready to screw that down. Okay, so a couple of bits just to talk about here. First one, something for the comment section. Who puts their little brass top hats in this way round? So I've got mine, so the wide bit is at the bottom of the servo, whereas lots of people put them the other way around, and I used to put them that way around as well, until I watched another video on YouTube. I think it was the lighter side of RC, if anyone watches that, and Jonathan, who presents that, knows a thing or two about building models, and he does them this way round because obviously on the screw you've already got the washer that side, and it's just to stop that from sort of pulling through. That's the theory anyway, so it does seem to make more sense to me, but interested to know what you guys think. I've also connected the extension lead, and I've put some heat shrink tubing on that, and just shrunk that down just to give that extra bit of security, because obviously we don't want that coming off. These are quite nice extension leads that I've got, because they have actually got this tab on them that hooks onto the end of the when you put the servo plug in, this sort of hooks onto it. But better to be safe than sorry. Might be belt and braces, but I'd rather have the heat shrink tubing on there as well. So I've also drilled the holes out. It's actually really quite thin balsa, surprisingly. I thought that would be plywood for the servo mounts, but I've drilled them out just with my little pin vise, which works perfectly for this sort of thing, and I've just dripped a little bit of CA into those just to make them a little bit stronger. So I've also tied the cord as well to the servo plug, so in theory if I break that off there, we should be able to pull this through, all being well. Almost there. Okay, that should do. So that's going to go in there like that. The other thing I've done is I've tested the servo before I, after I put the extension lead on, before I put the heat shrink on and all that. So I tested it and make sure the extension lead works okay, make sure the actual servo works okay, and I've actually centered the servo, so that's the center position there. So obviously from the factory they've just put the horn on in a funny position, so I just need to take that off and line it up. The other thing I've done as well is I've found in my box of bits some servo keepers, so I am actually going to use those. So I'm just going to bend a right angle in the push rod and use a servo keeper, but I'll show you that anyway when I do that. But for now we can, in fact I'm probably going to have to get the servo tester on that again, but we can now get this screwed into position. I always find these servo screws are a bit naff, to be honest. In fact I have got some much nicer ones in my box of bits with like a hex head finish to them, but you'd think with these being high-tech servos they'd be decent screws, but they're not great, I've got to say. Okay, that's got that fastened in. So next job, now I've got this, I need to recenter that and position the servo arm, and then I can get my push rod and just sort of figure out where I'm going to be putting the control horn, which is going to go about there like that, and I've just got to drill out for that control horn. Okay, so what I've done is I've just dug the push rod out and I've just fitted the clevis to the end of that. I've also made sure I've got plenty of movement as well there on the thread, so it's kind of in the middle of the thread, so I can adjust it either way, and then just line that up with the servo arm here, and then I've drilled some holes into the aileron. Unfortunately they do have to go through to the other side because you have the little plastic cap to put on the other side, which is obviously going to show on the top of the wing, but can't really do anything about that. So I've just got to get this control horn screwed in place, and then I can have a look at bending this and putting the keeper on. And as it happens, they have included them in the kit, I just couldn't see them. So they've just got these, 2 of these, so I'm definitely going to use those. So yeah, let me okay, we've got that hooked up now. Just show you close in there. Now it was a little bit fiddly because the bolts that they provided in the kit to go through these control horns are too small, and they don't come through the other side of the aileron enough. They just sort of poke through, but it's not enough to get that white cap on. Fortunately, I'd got this bag of longer ones, so I was able to use a couple of those, but otherwise, you know, you'd be a bit shafted really. So that's a bit frustrating. I've just got to cut those off on the other side because obviously they're a bit longer, they're too long, but I'll just trim those off with some bolt clippers, that's fine. And then I've got this hooked up, so again the push rod is absolutely massive for this, but you only need a tiny little bit, but there we are. So yeah, I've got that connected up using a push rod keeper there, so that can't come out of there, so that's got that nice and tight. And then at the moment I've just got it lined up. Obviously I'll need to recalibrate all this once I've actually got my radio gear installed, because the centre of the servo might be slightly different to my servo tester, but that's moving quite nice there, plenty of movement, so shouldn't be a problem. So now I've done that one, I'm going to get the, let me just switch that off so it's not buzzing. I'm going to get the other side done, so I'm going to get the Aileron on the other wing done, and then once I've done that, I'm going to get my mini servos ordered tomorrow, so they should come in a couple of days, but in the meantime I'll get the other Aileron servo done, and then I'm going to start on the undercarriage, the retracts, so obviously I can show you that as the next step. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since the last clip, but I've got both Aileron servos installed, and I've also now taken delivery of the flap servos. I just went with some McGregor digital metal geared ones in the end, 17-gram servos, because these are going to be absolutely fine, and I quite like the McGregor ones, and they're just a bit cheaper than the equivalent high-tech ones. They were about 3 times the price, but hopefully that's going to fit in there okay. Just going to need a tiny little bit taking out of the hole there, so I need to trim that down. That's fine, it's only a tiny little bit. And then the horns for this one, they've just included this style. So these are the ones where you, bizarrely they've put 2 slots as well in the flap. Obviously you only need 1, but it should go through here. They've cut a slot already. Maybe that needs making a little wider. And then the way these work is you put them through, and then there's like this locking piece on the back. It's kind of like a cable tie or zip tie idea. So you put that on the back and it secures it in place. I'm not always a massive fan of these, so I just find that they're not very secure, but we'll see how it goes. I can always obviously put a little bit of epoxy in there as well if it doesn't feel very secure. So yeah, I'm going to get this sanded down and then just get that slot widened up a bit, and then I'll get the servo in and just show you it all hooked up. Okay, so got the flap servo all hooked up. There's not tons of movement on there, as you can see, but enough, I suppose. It will make a difference. Slow it down a little bit. Probably not going to use the flaps tons on this, but we've got it there anyway. Used a slightly different system on this, not quite as robust, you might say, as the Aileron one, but obviously it's only for the flap, so should be fine for this because it's not going to get used very often. But it's just with the grub screw style in the end of the servo arm there, a little Z bend on the control horn, and then yeah, I used those control horns that this applied, which they're not great, the ones with the little ratchet on, and I actually had to trim it down on the back because it wouldn't fit on because it was too wide. So trim that down, put it on, but it was quite wobbly, so I just dripped a little bit of thin CA around here and on the back as well, just to secure it, and I think that should be fine. So there we go, split flaps, as they say. So that's that wing done. Just going to get this done on the other side, and then we're going to get stuck into the undercarriage. And there's quite a lot to show you around that. So I'll get the other one done, and then we'll take a look at that. Oh, the other thing just to mention is I'm going to put some different extension leads on the flap, so it's a different colour. But I've only got these long ones at the minute. They're way too long, so just need to order some smaller ones. So I'll get a pack of those. But then I'm going to have 2 different colours coming out of the wing, so I know which ones ailerons and which ones for the flaps. That's what I usually do. So undercarriage, next job. Right then, onto the undercarriage. I've got to tell you as well today, very exciting because it's bank holiday weekend in May in the UK and it's hot at last. I've actually got my shorts on right now, so can't complain. Everyone's in a good mood. Yeah, so I'm onto the undercarriage now. So we've got a couple of components for the undercarriage. Just all the bits are in this bag here. So I've taken one of them out. We've obviously got the main undercarriage here, which is the retracts. And that does fit in there quite nicely. They've already put like a, you can see there, they've made like a bit of a recess there, and it fits into that perfectly because it's got these 2 notches on the side as well. And it doesn't move once it's in there because of that. So that's really easy. I've literally just got to mark out the 4 holes, drill that in, job done. And then in terms of the actual retract legs, you've got this bit here, which is the oleo, and that's nicely sprung as well with a little detail on there, so that's cool. And then you get just a metal shaft like that, and I've just marked that out, so fitted it in here, marked it out with a little fine Sharpie, and just used my Dremel with a little grinding bit on the end like that, and whoops, smashed it into the tripod, and yeah, just to get a couple of flat spots on there. So I've got one that side, that one goes in there like that, and then that one on that side is going to be the bit that goes in here basically. There's a grub screw on each side, so there's 2 grub screws here, and same on this bit. Obviously I've only made one of them for the flat side, because that should be all we need to lock it in place. So next job is, now I've done those, I'm going to get this marked up, get the holes drilled out, get this attached, and then we can just have a look and see how that's fitting. We've got to obviously put the wheels on, but we'll see how that's going to fit into the bay there, and probably have a bit of a fiddle around with that. So I'll get those little bits done, and then I'll be back to you when we've got this fastened in place and Loctited and all that sort of stuff. Actually guys, getting ahead of myself slightly here because I've got these bits to put on. So these fasten onto this, so that lines up there like that. This bit faces the back, so you're going to have that in there. That's going to be like that, with this facing towards the rear of the wing. And then looking at the instructions, this slopey bit here, because that one's more sort of slopes than that one, that also goes towards the back of the wing. So that's the one I need to go on the back here, like that. You can just about see that, I think. So that's then going to fold into there like that. And what you do is, in this bag here, there's a bag of bits for the fixed undercarriage and the retracts, you get these things included in the kit. And these little plywood bits, you can get them out of this bag. So yeah, we've just got these little pieces like this, and they slide on here. Now I'm going to have to take the grub screws out, which is annoying. So I've just Loctited those in. But essentially they slide on here. In fact, let me just take these grub screws out and I'll show you. Okay, so they slide on there like that. And then you're going to get these and they're going to glue into those bits there. So it's going to be a little bit fiddly. So we glue those in now, and I can run some thin CA in there to lock those bits in, but we don't actually glue them onto the oleo yet until we've got it all positioned and I'm happy with where it is. So let me just get some thin CA into there. Okay, so we'll just run some thin CA in there and there. So we've got those on now, and now that's going to fit into there like that, and I can go about getting that fastened in, and then we can, once we're happy with where the position of these, then I can lock these in onto the actual oleo. So let me get that done, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, after quite a lot of fiddling, managed to get this set up. So mounted that in there, that went in okay there, but then, as always with these sorts of things, it wasn't very well lined up with this cutout. I had to cut some material as well out of the wings, but that's fine, because it was just some thin sort of 1/8 bolts there, because it was just this outer cover was just hitting here and jamming it up. I mean, it was nowhere near how it should be, so cut some bits out there, and then messed around sort of trying to position this up, and as you can see I've got the wheel on there, that's spinning nice. And then if I just the only thing is it's far from perfect, you know, and I suppose that's what you get for this kind of model. It's never going to be a super precise, you know. I'd really like the wheel to go right in here and then this cover fit flush, but it's kind of nowhere near, to be honest. But that's where we are. So it goes in like that. The wheel's like as far down as it can go. It can't go down any more than that because it's touching the top of the wing, I think, there. But this cover is like sticking up by quite a way, but it should be fine. I mean, you're not really going to see that obviously when it's flying around, but there's nothing else I can do about it. I mean, the only way to, well, I don't know what else you could do. You could maybe just start taking these undercarriage rails out, taking some material off to try and sit this lower, but I don't think it will sit that much lower because I'm pretty sure that the other side of the wheel is touching this. So it is what it is, really. I'm not going to spend hours and hours trying to make it perfect. It's just not that sort of a model. Yeah, but there we are. It's quite good. The only other thing I've got an issue with is I've lined the wheel up so it fits flush into here. But when you tip the wing up and look forwards, you can probably see from there, there's quite a angle on that, and it's quite a lot of toe out, it would be. Which I don't think is going to be a major issue. I mean, the other side's going to be the same, so if anything, it will help it track straight, but it feels like it's an awful lot. So that's just something I'm going to have to have a play around with and see if it has any problems rolling along the ground like that. And if it does, obviously it's going to have to readjust it more, but if you adjust it, it doesn't fit in the hole properly then. So one of them. Anyway, that's that. I'm going to get the other side done, and then once we've done that, we're on to joining the wings together. Okay, so we're on to a bit of a hairy bit now because we've got to join the wings together. This is the final bit of this particular episode. So I've got everything prepared. So I've routed the servo leads through the top of the wing. There's a hole ready, and I've just taped these in place. They're not going to go anywhere. Done the same on the other wing, and then as you can see, I've got this spar in place here, and I've done a dry fit. On the other side, there's a little dowel there which you have to glue in place, and then obviously the wing is going to slide on there. We can put a clamp on there. I've got some clamps ready to go on here, and also it says to put the wing bolts in and then use an elastic band to sort of pull them together. But I've also found if I put a clamp on here as well, it really gets it lined up nicely. So I've got some 30-minute epoxy mixed up. I'm going to get to work on this now, get it all smothered in epoxy, get it clamped up, and then we can leave it. Right, here we go then. Moment of truth. There we go. So let's get that front clamp together. Let's get the back clamp together. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put this band on now just to pull these in. Doesn't matter, of course, if there's a little bit of epoxy running down, because this is all covered by the fuselage anyway. But that is looking pretty good. Just want to make sure I don't get epoxy all over the wings. What I might do is just put another clamp kind of on the top there. That's not going to work. Okay, let's have a look underneath, see how we're looking here. Okay, there is quite a lot of epoxy there, so I'm going to have to wipe that. Okay, I'm pretty pleased with that. That's all looking good. All nicely lined up, really nicely squozen together. There's no gaps or anything down there. That's like a nice consistent line down there. So all I've got to do now is leave that for the next 30 minutes to go off. It's a nice warm day, so it should go off relatively quickly. I've put an extra little G-clamp on here just to make sure that's really nicely pulled together. Clamp on there, as you can see, and then we've got the two wing bolts joined together as well with the elastic bands on the other side. So all looking good. So that's going to draw this video to a close. That's got all the wings up. These are set up now, ready to go. Just need to get a nice bubble wrap wing bag made up for these. But yeah, we can put these to one side now, and then the next episode I'm going to be mounting the engine and sorting the engine cowl out, which is always a job I get a little bit stressed about, but I want to get that done before I put the tail on, because once I've got the tail on, obviously then it becomes a bit hard to manoeuvre around the workshop, so I always tend to leave the tail until last. So hope you've enjoyed following along to this, hope you're enjoying watching. If you're into balsa, fixed wing, nitro, electric, all that sort of stuff, then please subscribe to my channel. It's completely free of charge, and I'd love to have you on board as a subscriber. And massive thanks to all those people that already subscribe. Really appreciate your support, and I'll see you soon for the next one.